Good morning, PEI. Pierre is visiting PEI this afternoon, and it's great timing considering that it's April Fool's Day. This is a quick video to ensure that you don't get played by Pierre, don't get sucked in. It's about why I don't trust him to lead the Canadian government and why I don't think you should trust him either. If you like what I've got to say in this video, please do share it to help the word get around. Now, of course, the rally, I think they're hosting at the Bridge this afternoon, is probably going to talk a little bit about how the Conservative government would commit to scrapping bridge tolls. Liberals have said the same, that they'd commit to scrapping bridge tolls. And for what it's worth, if I'm elected as representative, I would do the same, scrap the tolls as well. It's high time we remove that trade barrier. But I'll also go further and just remind people that the reason we have the contract with Strait Crossing Inc. set up the way that it is because of the Conservative Mulroney government who negotiated that contract in 1993. It's a 40-year contract which gave the opportunity to a private company to make profit from a piece of public infrastructure. And the Conservatives at that time should have been more careful when signing a 40-year contract, but it's part of that party's ideology to give public money away to private industry. They do it time after time, issue after issue. The way that that contract was set up means that users, islanders, have been paying more for the use of the bridge up until that point, and now buying out that contract is going to cost the taxpayers more than if we had just signed that contract with the public interest in mind from the first principles. And that principle is that if it's public infrastructure, it should have public oversight. But I digress. I want to talk in this video about the links between the federal Conservative Party in Canada, the US Republican Party, and the oil and gas industry, not only in Alberta, but also in the US states. For many years, through the Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers, they have funded lobbyists, think tanks, and propaganda and marketing firms that have manipulated Canadian democracy and manipulated many of our neighbors into believing that that industry's short-term profits and an expanded oil and gas industry in Canada is somehow in the interests of Canada and the world. But it is not. That is a great big dirty oil industry lie. What is in our interests, according to climate scientists and economists who've studied the issue of climate change and fossil fuels over decades, is to reduce emissions and phase out the fossil fuel industry in this generation over the next 20 years. We've got 20 years to 2045. Now, the importance of phasing out the fossil fuel industry lands particularly hard here on PEI. We are a province made up of primary industries, farming, fishing, and then tourism are our major industries. And all of those industries rely on us having a stable climate. Our atmospheric climate and our ocean temperatures here are what provide the conditions for our primary producers to succeed, to be able to harvest lobster, to be able to grow oysters and mussels free of the invasive diseases that come up from the south. It provides the conditions needed for our farms to be successful. Summer seasons that are not too hot, not too dry, not too wet, that have predictable frost dates. Hurricanes in September that are flattening fields of corn at the end of a growing season, which we've had twice in the last 6 years. They're far from ideal, and that's just a taste of the experiences that we're going to have if our future climate keeps going the direction we're going, if Canada and the world does not get our emissions under control. But reducing emissions and constricting the oil and gas industry's production and our consumption would reduce the profits of these oil and gas corporate giants. And so they've been doing everything that they can to manipulate public opinion so that they can continue to expand unregulated. They want to lift the regulations that have been put in place in the public interest because of our new knowledge of climate science. This industry has been working overtime to convince Canadians of three main lies that I'll go through in a sec. And unfortunately, it seems like many of our neighbors have been sucked right into their manipulation and propaganda. The first lie is that the carbon tax was responsible for post-COVID inflation and the rise in the cost of living that we saw in the last few years. I'll drop some links in the chat to explain why that is not actually the case. Countries without a carbon tax also experienced the same post-COVID inflation. The second lie that this industry has been promoting is that electric vehicles aren't practical in Canada or that they don't work here. That's also a lie. There are many people on the island who've been successfully using electric vehicles, loving them, enjoying the financial savings of not having to stop at the gas tank, at the gas station, multiple times a month. The third lie is that it would be a good thing to crisscross the country with pipelines for export of diluted bitumen. None of these things are actually true, but it is in the interest, the financial interest of the oil and gas giants to have you believe these things. And now, at a time when we're talking about strengthening the Canadian economy and buying Canadian, it's particularly important to note that oil and gas companies that operate in Canada are majority foreign owned. 70% of the oil sands is owned by foreign companies, and they're largely American and Chinese companies. And they are taking profits made from our natural resources, and they're taking those profits straight out of this country. We're all looking to consider which can of tomato soup should we buy at the grocery store so that we're not giving money to the US, to US companies, while the US is being so hostile and aggressive towards Canada. But we seem to be turning a blind eye at the largest factors and some of the largest actors in the Canadian corporate space. So I'm going to post 3 articles in the links below this video. One is an article describing the foreign ownership of the Canadian fossil fuel industry. Second article is on the folly of building pipelines at this moment in history. And we always say in Canada that you should shoot the puck to where the puck is going, not where it's been. And where we're going, where the world is going, is decreasing oil consumption. Now is not the time to build a multi-decade pipeline project. And third article I'm going to share is about the network of oil and gas industry lobbyists that cross the border, the lobbyists, the communication advisors who have been supporting the hard right, climate denying, fossil fuel promoting wing of the federal Conservative Party, the reform wing, which is Pierre Poilievre's origins in politics. They're supporting the Alberta Conservatives, Danielle Smith, the Wild Rose hard right. And they're also supporting the US Republicans under Trump with their drill baby drill, screw the future ideology. And to make this local for a minute, I also want to connect to Jamie Foxx, who's my Conservative opponent in the riding of Malpeque this election. Now, Jamie Foxx proudly talks about the fact that he used to own a gas station. That means that he literally made money, made his income from fossil fuel dependency, from the fossil fuel dependency of all of us. When we're driving gas cars, we need to go and buy oil. He made his profits from that. Transitioning to electric vehicles and renewable energy would not have aligned with his personal financial interests. And so if you look at his record as a provincial politician, you'll see time and time again that he's always been against climate action incentives and against the transition to electric vehicles. I don't think he understands why it's important. And you know what they say, I think Al Gore talked about this back in 2007. There's that saying, it's hard to make a man understand something when his salary depends upon his not understanding it. Think about that for a sec. If your salary depends on not understanding something, then you're going to try to find every way you can to deny the facts. I'll wrap up, but I just want to say finally, what is in the interests of the oil and gas industry is not in the interests of Canada. It's certainly not in the interest of PEI, an agricultural province that depends on a stable climate. And climate science is abundantly clear. It's not in the interests of our kids. Our kids need us to keep our eye on the ball, to keep the energy transition going, to effectively reduce emissions, and to phase out the fossil fuel industry in this generation. Don't get sucked into their lies. We need action, and we need to regulate their industry. Canada has not effectively reduced our national emissions in 20 years, while the rest of the world is making progress on emission reduction. Emissions have not reduced in the last 10 years of the Liberals, and they didn't reduce in the 10 years of the Conservatives before them. Oh, my cat's visiting. The Liberals literally bought a pipeline on the West Coast with your tax dollars. $900 for each Canadian went into buying and building the Trans Mountain Pipeline. And emission reduction certainly hasn't happened under Conservative leadership either. If you understand the urgency of climate action and you want a representative who'll take it seriously, I'm your girl. Hello. What a nice surprise. Being free to talk about this stuff is why I run as a Green. And we have a vision on climate that meets the requirements that climate science demands. And we have a vision for a strong local economy with good paying jobs in a vibrant agricultural, fishing, tourism, renewable energy industry right here on PEI, and biotech. There are plenty of countries out there that are doing just fine without having huge fossil fuel reserves. If you agree with what I've shared in this video and you want more islanders to understand it, you know what to do. Please click the share button.